Flashes of memory present. Welcome to channel.
Scary story. She had marks across her neck. My brother once lived in an apartment in downtown Clemens, Michigan. The Clem was known to be a hot spot for bats back in the Depression era, and was booming with activity. Nowadays it has some rundown parts. This is where my brother rented his flat. It was a giant old raggedy house which was now separated into multiple odd apartments. Anyways, long story short, he always admitted to odd experiences. Cupboard doors opening up, things missing, but one peculiar oddity was that he was always missing boxers' underwear from his drawer. He admitted that he thought his house was haunted, and that the ghost had a crush on him. Never anything violent or disturbing, just odd things. Later on he starts dating his future ex-wife. She starts coming around and he notices that the oddities begin to increase. New oddities began to occur. His girlfriend would always find her shoes which were left on a mat inside the apartment outside the door on the patio in the morning. She'd always comment to my brother to stop putting her shoes outside. He had an idea of why, but didn't want to frighten her. Besides, it wasn't hurting anyone, right? Well, things started getting worse. He comes home from work and his girlfriend was staying there while he was gone. Claims that the stove burner kept lighting itself. She'd walk into the kitchen and it would be lit. She'd turn it off and shortly later it'd be lit again. Then, one night my brother wakes up in the middle of the night and sees his girlfriend sitting at the end of the bed, not just sees but feels her near his feet, staring at him. He calls out for her to come back to bed. She doesn't respond. So he calls out louder telling her to come to bed and asking, "What's wrong?" His girlfriend then asks what he's doing. He turns and she's sleeping next to him. He turns back. No one is at the end of the bed. Now, he's freaked out but doesn't want to scare his girlfriend from coming over his place. A few nights later, they're both sleeping, and he wakes up to his girlfriend screaming. He looks over and she's sleeping, but thrashing around holding onto her neck. He doesn't see anything so he starts yelling and shaking her to wake her up. After a few shakes she wakes up crying and terrified. She starts telling my brother about how real her dream felt, that a woman was strangling her telling her to get out, that she doesn't belong there and to leave her man alone. Her neck had red marks on it, possibly from herself trying to defend herself, but they believed it to be from something else. My brother then comes clean with her. They decide to do some research and find out that the address that they live in was an old brothel back in the day that the rich bathers used to stay in. My brother lived in that house for a few more weeks before he could locate a new place. She never came back to stay the night though, and he never experienced anything aggressive while there. Still, kinda fucked up though. I know my brother, and I can tell when he's lying. This shit was legit, and when she talked about it, you could see how shaken up she was. I heard phantom footsteps running toward me. Okay, this happened to me when I was a junior in high school. It was December and it had just started snowing that evening. My best friend and I were in debate and getting ready for our state qualifiers that were the next day. We were writing our cases and, as usual, at each other's throats over the details of the cases. It was a stressful, tense evening. We finally finished our cases at about 3 a.m. Then, we went to my room for the night. Almost as soon as we get into my room, we hear what sounds like the water turning on in the other end of the house. No big deal. Probably my parents, I think. Then, we hear the front door open. I told her. I bet Mom woke up and wanted some fresh air. It made sense. I really thought that's what it was. Until we heard incredibly heavy footsteps in my living room, headed for my room. They were not anyone in my family's footsteps. Then they stopped. My friend and I looked at each other and were both freaked out, just standing, frozen in my room. We walked closer to each other and the footsteps started again. But this time they were running toward us. We both flipped. We grabbed each other's hands, out of fear, and my bedroom door flew open. We both looked at the door. Nobody was there. We ran to the bathroom that's connected to my room. I locked the door and stood against it. When we finally got the balls to do it, we sprinted to my parents' room, crying and hysterical. We obviously startled my parents awake. They said neither of them had gotten up. My dad grabbed his gun and looked outside. No tracks in the snow. Anywhere around our house. My friend called me after she passed away. My best friend died of cancer back in 2002. We were incredibly close in every way, and we spent the majority of our free time together. Almost a year after she died, I was in my apartment sleeping and my phone rang around 3 a.m. I had one of those Sony Ericsson T610. I was very groggy and picked up the phone from my nightstand and looked at it. I saw it was my friend's number. I immediately became alert and awake and answered the phone very curious. I said hello a few times, but all I could hear was very loud static for about 30 seconds. Eventually, the call ended. At this point, I was freaking out and called the number back only to get an automated recording that this number was out of service. I then called her mother's house to see if possibly her older sister may have had my friend's old phone and might have called me by accident. But there was no answer at my friend's mother's home. Come to find out, the remaining family was away in Miami. After they came home a few days later, I took the phone to them and showed them the call log, and they were in disbelief. They went to my friend's room and got the phone out of the drawer, where it had been sitting for months. Battery stone cold dead.
Thanks for listening to this story to the end. Every Wednesday and Sunday, Flashes of Memory publishes a new story.